can I say, this is for me. I'm sorry. I know you're not supposed to let comments and social media and everything. Can I follow up with, so the comments that were put out on social media by our awesome station and Lucas and everybody yesterday with regard to, again, first of all, it was an if. I did not call the Warriors the Dallas Cowboys. I said in this scenario, as it sits, if the Warriors come out and lay an egg tonight, I will be here tomorrow to call them the Dallas Cowboys. Two mistakes have been made by many of our listeners and in the world of social media. A, you think I called them the Dallas Cowboys. No, it was an ultimatum and an if. And B, everybody keeps hanging on to this, even if they had lost, and even if we stink this year, we still have 4 rings. I'm solely talking about this year.
Right.
And the concept was, contextually, I know context is so dead in 2024, but contextually, the idea was, if the Warriors can't perform well last night, you are classically a team that might make the playoffs solely on the shoulders of beating bad teams and never being able to muscle up against a good team. And that characteristic to me this year was the Dallas Cowboys. Well, they didn't do it. They were awesome. They were as awesome as they've been at any point this year. So you can take the whole Dallas Cowboy idea and flush it and relax, put all your feelings back in the box. We're all okay here.
What's in the box? Your feelings. And conceptually, the point that you were making, I thought, was an excellent one.
Well,
and
thank you, Dan.
Well, I don't always think that, and I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you that unless I truly believe it.
Rarely, I would argue.
No, you make good points. You're very well reasoned. You're well researched. At times, I don't agree with some of your approaches, but that's you, and I can never get inside. Okay, you tend to default toward coaches and generals manager more than the average fan, and certainly more than I do. Okay. You give benefit to the doubt at a greater level than I do,
yes,
and that many people do.
Definitely.
So in terms of things that you and I tend to agree and disagree upon, the disagreements usually stem from that. I'm more prone to rip and blame.
Look, I would have hated Gabe Kapler too, but he was all over the city with burgers on Instagram.
And you had his voice down
pat. What am I supposed to do?
I'll give you a pass for that one.
I can't hate a person who does that. It's like...
You're not going to hate him anyway.
Yeah, he took the pitcher out in the 3rd inning. But look at this juicy burger.
Totally.
And I'm like, I'm distracted. I see the burger. I don't see anything else.
He's great.
There's nothing I could do.
I liked him a lot more at Starbucks when I would bump into him, and I did a couple of times.
I went to that Starbucks today.
Oh, you did?
With the lovely Christy.
It's a great Starbucks.
She came, met me in the city. I'm like, let's go to the Kapler Starbucks.
Levi Square.
She goes, is this the one?
Yeah, Levi's Plaza.
Now you can say it.
Now that he's not there anymore.
You were
he's across the
protecting him
country.
for a year and a half.
I didn't want to out his little locale. But as far as what you said about the Warriors being like the Dallas Cowboys, I thought was a great point, because Dallas, and we ran through the schedule yesterday, the Cowboys didn't have any quality wins, really, against teams that were high quality and playing well. And this Warrior team, they had 4 wins total against the top 4 in either conference. So I think that your analogy was an apt one, but now we can put that thing to bed. We can tuck it in and turn off the lights, put on the sound machine, and give them a stuffed animal, because that's not a thing anymore. Not only because they beat Milwaukee, but the way they beat Milwaukee. That felt like a Golden State Warrior game where you're rested, you're healthy, you're at home. You should win that game. And then you go out there and you beat them down almost start to finish.
As you pointed out, twice.
Right.
They beat them, then they beat them again.
Exactly.
And I think that is absolutely more impressive, because I do buy what Draymond said after the game. Don't get distracted by the fact that Milwaukee made a run. That's the NBA. That's the NBA, especially if you're a good team. You make a run. You can't just be like, okay, Giannis, we're just going to pat you on the head for 48 minutes. It doesn't work that way. There's too much talent on the floor. Look at that team.
Yeah.
Good God. They all look like trees, and their only person who's not a tree is named Dame Lillard. This is a very, very good basketball team. And the Warriors beat them once soundly, and then they beat them even more soundly to the point where they submitted. And so, yes, would you agree, was that, I want to make sure I picked the right word here. Was that the most impressive performance of the year?
You could say, yeah. I think that the win over Boston was impressive, but
yes.
That was a home game, and you had to gut that one out. You needed late heroics to do it. The win over Phoenix was certainly impressive, but the fact, and maybe it's just recency bias and also how much they needed that win. Yep. They needed to prove it to themselves that they could be that team against that competition. But you beat Milwaukee by 35. And I know a lot of that was window dressing. You outscored them by 23 in the fourth quarter, which means you were up by a dozen going into that fourth quarter. But you put that thing away pretty early in the fourth. And, Steph Curry's out there working on his golf swing, and you were able to empty the bench. So that felt like the kind of game we're used to from this Golden State Warriors team.
Yep, absolutely. Now, I will say this real quick before we go to the phones. I don't want to damper everybody's Dubs party, the little Dubs dance that everybody's doing today. I don't want to put a damper on it. But you go out there and mess this thing up tonight.
Oh, boy.
Gonna take it all back. Now, you don't get to do that. That totally gives it all up. And I'd say, listen, it's a back-to-back, and there's probably going to be a stinker or two the rest of the year. That's the NBA. This is not that spot. If you're tired tonight, the Bulls are more tired.
They played last night, too.
Yes, in Utah.
Right.
And their starters' minutes, their good players' minutes are through the roof. These guys, some of them went north of 40 minutes last night. The Warriors do not have anybody who did that last night. In fact, let's see. Top minute player last night, Steph Curry had 31. He's the only guy who hit the
31, yeah.
31 out of 48.
Exactly.
You got it. You have to, the rest of the way, if you want to play 6, 7, or 8 seed, you have got to handle these games.
Kobe White played 42 minutes in Utah.
Too many.
DeRozan, 38. Dosunmu, 36. Caruso, 34. Their starters played all but 58 minutes, Mark. All but 58 minutes came from that starting five.
Why'd they play that one so intense? They won. They won by 2.
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe that was strategic. I wonder if the Bulls looked at this trip and went like I wonder if some of these guys will get load managed tonight.
Interesting.
The Bulls are, they're not a good team, but this is a Eastern Conference play-in team. They are so they're playing for something.
Right.
I wonder if they looked at this strategically as teams do on road trips and back-to-backs and went, look, put all the chips in the middle of the table to beat Utah.
Well, which game are we more likely to win? Right.
We're probably going to get our butts kicked by the Warriors the way they're going right now. Probably. So, got to win that one in Utah. And they played like that. Left everybody on the floor the whole night.
Yeah.
And they had to grind out a 2-point win. You beat that team tonight. You beat them.
You hammer them.
You beat them.
They actually won at Sacramento. Then they go to Utah and win. Now they come here, and then they go to L.A. for a game on Saturday.
They got to be tired. They've got to be. So third game of a trip, third game in 4 nights, second game in 2 nights, and all the starters went close to 40 minutes last night. You beat that team.
It feels a little bit like this one would be load management city, and then you've got a Clipper game on Saturday. It's a 1:00 game.
Oof.
So you've got 2 games.
What a trip.
You've got 2 games in basically 36 hours or so.
Yeah.
You've got 4 over the course of, I think, 6 nights, including 2 games that are back-to-back and another one that's a Saturday matinee.
That's like 3 games in 60 hours.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think you look at the schedule now, and you already have 2 wins in your pocket on this 4-game road trip. This one does feel like a load management special. We'll keep an eye on that as we get closer to Warriors Live.
Absolutely, yeah. You do wonder. Now, these are not DeRozan, but I was thinking of Kobe. He's a young guy.
Yep.
I think he'd probably get back out there, but who knows? I don't know if they load manage him. Sometimes you load manage within the game, like the Warriors did last Sunday. You're going to play. Oh, it's not going well? No, you're not going to play anymore. Right. They could do that. That's definitely a possibility. Let's go to Jonathan in the city. Hey, Jonathan, you're on with Willard and Dibs. What's up?
Hey, man, it's just what a wonderful game. It's the first dominant game I've ever seen this year from the Warriors. And highlighted by TJD, man, what a performance, that young guy. If he could do that night in, night out, we got action. But that's going to be the key. The same way with Pajensky and all these guys. The key to consistency is going to be that ingredients that they'll be looking for the remainder of the regular season. But it's a positive. It's a sneaky great draft class, this Pajensky and TJD. And it just gives me a reason to adjust my meter maid, my expectation, because now we, like I said, if those young guys could find consistency, in their game to contribute night in and night out, they got more than a puncher's chance heading to the playoffs. Because we all know how Draymond and the Warriors function as a team defensively when he's got a real active big man right beside him. So let's go Warriors.
Let's go, Jonathan. We appreciate it. I'll say this.
Earth, Wind, and Fire nod.
Always a good time. I'll say this, though. The same way that I have said after losses, I this is just, you can do it whatever you want. I am going to continue to force myself into the exercise of it's Thursday. Today's Thursday, and the Bulls are in town. Not, I think we're going to beat the Timberwolves in 2 months.
Yeah.
Because of what you said earlier.
Can they beat Denver in the semis, Mark? The Western Conference semis.
Wait a minute. The way life just changed for the Wolves can happen to the Warriors any night.
Yeah, don't say that.
But it can.
And you're right.
So, let's not do May. Forget May. And forget April. I don't even want to talk about the second half of March. It's Thursday. You have to beat the Bulls in this situation. This is how, by the way, and I'm not alone in this. I know you do this. Anybody who really, really watches the league a lot, and betting lines and people who put these together, this is what they do. The NBA, I would say all sports, but really especially the NBA, it's situational.
Totally.
Where are you playing? Who are you playing? What's their situation?
Where have you been playing?
Were they on the tarmac last night?
Right.
And none of those things are 100% because the Warriors were on the tarmac and then they came out and they won by 15 on the road. So obviously nothing is for certain. But when you get to the last month of the regular season and you're chasing a playoff spot, I think even more so, you really start to chase the situations. That's why I felt the way I felt yesterday about last night. That was a situational win for the Warriors. Tonight is the same thing. I don't know if I do the whole 8-point spread thing. That's a little bit different. That's a little hot, considering that the Warriors also played a very emotional, hard-fought defensive game last night. I would just take the night off if I were an NBA bettor, at least with the Warriors. But they should win. They should win. They have to win. That's not going to be true for all of these. There might even be a game, who knows, maybe Monday in San Antonio, where the Warriors sweep the homestand. Wemby is returning on Monday night, and you might be like, this is a little trappy. This feels a little trappy to me. And you got Dallas.
Yep.
That's flanking.
It's a letdown spot.
It could be a little trappy.
It's a letdown spot.
So I look at that and try to stay in those moments rather than taking last night's result and doing we gonna be championship. I know it feels like that today. Last night was amazing. It was needed. You had to prove that to everybody, all of those different things. But I'm still not going to even think of the Warriors and contention until I know that they're at least one of the top 8 seeds. And they're not yet. And if you lose tonight, you kick everything that you did last night.
I won't even think about it until you emerge from the play-in tournament and you actually get into a scenario where, okay, now they've got OKC or now they've got Minnesota. And if you're the 7 seed and you go up against Minnesota and you think, well, Karl Anthony Towns, is he out? And if he is, that definitely helps your chances. And if you get by them and you look at maybe who the 3 is, if the 3 is somehow the Clippers or if it's Denver, my God, and you kind of hope that you don't face Denver until the Western Conference Finals if you make it that far. And you could start to have those conversations, I think, when you get to that point. I'm really trying to just stay in the moment. And yes, we'll look back at last night and really enjoy it. And they played so well that it makes you think what could be possible in 6 weeks. Absolutely. But you're right. You got to handle Chicago tonight. at home. You're 8-point favorites, and they're coming off a game in Utah. This is one that you absolutely should win.
You got to get it.
19 times out of 20, you should win this game.
I also think if you do want to daydream and think about the future, only because we've had these conversations earlier this week, this whole idea of do the Warriors, remember like Slates and Bob Fitzgerald both came on and talked about, do you even want the 6? Do you even want the 6? Because what if the 3 is Denver? Well, that's a thought that's been in our minds because Denver was the 3. However, and they remain the 3, but they're a game behind Minnesota and Oklahoma City only. And with the Cat news, wouldn't you argue that if you were a Vegas odds maker, wouldn't you argue that it is now more likely that the Minnesota Timberwolves end up as the 3?
Yeah, or even the 4.
Okay, so now, in theory, a betting man says the Warriors would be even more incentivized to go after their goal of the 6. Because now, suddenly, the 6 means a little bit more than it did yesterday afternoon.
If it's Minnesota or the Clippers in that 3 seed, absolutely. And you think about last year where you got the 6 and you got to go up against the Adorables, the Sacramento Kings, a team that hadn't been to the playoffs in more than a decade. And I do think that your championship pedigree is a big reason why you were able to emerge from that. Your superstar hung 50 in Game 7, and you survived against a team that was a little bit like Oklahoma City is this year. I think Oklahoma City is obviously better this year, but young, fast, inexperienced is what Sacramento was. So you would love to take on another one of these inexperienced teams in the first round.
Streaming live on YouTube, as always, twitch.tv/957 The Game, youtube.com/957 The Game. Great way to watch the show, comment. We're in there all the time. Watch us live, subscribe to the channel, all of our shows. Hit the thumbs up button on YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. All right, this says Omar in Oakland, but I think it's actually a wet blanket in Oakland.
Oh, no.
Oh, here we go. Come on, Omar, what do you got?
Wet blanket? Why you got to call me that, brother?
Because I think you're about to tell the Bay Area that the Warriors got no shot. Are you not?
I am about to tell them that, but I'm not a Warrior hater. I love watching them. They're a really great team. You know, they won 4 championships. They cemented their legacy. But at the end of the day, you guys know more ball than me. I'm way younger than y'all. Y'all know the 40-20 rule that the great Phil Jackson started, but he really didn't start it. He just dubbed it the 40-20 rule, where to be considered a legitimate contender, you have to win 40 games before you lose 20 games. And if we go by that metric, if you look at it, if you look it up, you guys Google it, it's been so accurate that the only teams that were their exceptions were the Miami Heat of last year and the 2016-15 Cavaliers when they had LeBron. But other than that, you can almost predict who's going to be in the Final Four for both conferences. And I don't see the Warriors getting out of it because if it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it looks like a duck. The Warriors are, at best, they might win one round, and that's about it.
Well, for sure, and I got to look it up. Omar, thank you. For sure, he's forgetting some. The Boston Celtics made the finals against the Warriors 2 years ago and were a 500 team in January. There's no way they got their 40th win before their 20th loss, I would argue. I'd have to look up where they were, but I think that weren't they like 24-24 in January? Isn't that about right? Something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
So I feel like, A, we're forgetting some there. B, that means we can eliminate, hang on, checks notes.
Most teams.
Just about everybody in the NBA.
There's 4 teams in the West that are 40-20 eligible.
The Bucks lost their 20th game this year before their 40th win.
Yeah.
So they're not a contender now?
So you would just have Boston.
The Celtics.
And
the Wolves. The Thunder. And I'd have to check the
Milwaukee
Nuggets.
just got their 40th win.
And Denver. Yes, Denver. But not the Clippers. So those 4 teams would be the only contenders then.
Yeah. Boston was got their 20th loss when they were 18-20 a couple of years ago.
And they went to the finals.
Yeah.
I'd also argue, and I really would argue this, especially for the Warriors, I just think circumstantially for teams each year, they become a different team sometimes in February or March than they were in November or December. I think that applies to the Warriors. I think it applies to a bunch of teams. You know, I think it applies to a bunch of teams this year based on guys being in or out.